on Cars is kindly sponsored by Car Vertical, the only car history checking service you'll need, which references more than 20 databases globally to make sure you don't buy a car with a hidden past. For a special discount on the service, please use the link in the description down below. And now, today's feature presentation.
Hello everybody, and welcome to my review of a 2015 AMG GT Edition 1. This is actually the first time I've really properly driven an AMG GT, and I'm so glad to have been given the opportunity by this car's very kind owner, Matthew. In theory, I should absolutely love this car. Despite the fact the weather is not ideal today, it has all the ingredients for a good old-fashioned time. It has a muscular, barrel-chested twin-turbo V8 up front, producing just over 500 horsepower and about 650 Newton meters of torque. Anyway, a lot of torque, 500 pound-foot, something like that. It's got double wishbone suspension, front and rear, which is the correct setup for a sporty car. The engine is more or less mounted in the middle. You sit practically over the rear axle, and at the back you'll find a 7-speed twin-clutch transmission. These have become very affordable of late, particularly if you're happy to go with one of the entry-level models that you can now snap up for less than £60,000. But this car has more or less the same ingredients, and indeed a lot of the same chassis as the old SLS. And that's a car that I really didn't like, because it also had a twin clutch box, which was very slow and not particularly good. It also had double wishbone suspension all round, which was incredibly firm. And okay, it did have a thunderous 6.2 litre V8 up front, but somehow the whole thing never really quite worked. It seemed to be an exercise in design, and actually as a car, a very, very unfinished product. These were quite a bit cheaper, both new and used. Indeed, if you want a brand new one, you can pick up the regular AMG GT for about 110 grand. And in the classifieds, like I said, they start from around 60. Now this GTS has a few upgrades over the base GT. So it's got a little bit more power, about 30 horses, I believe, 510 in this early car versus about 480. A little bit more torque, again about 50 Newton meters, so about 30-40 pound-foot, something like that. And it has an electronically controlled differential rather than the regular mechanical limited slip diff. You also get race mode in here too, and you also get staggered wheels. So you get 19s at the front, 20s at the rear. On top of that, this is an Edition 1, and it's got the Dynamic Plus pack or something like that, which gives you dynamic engine and transmission mounts, a few little Alcantara bits inside, and the Edition 1 gets you stuff like the wing at the back, part of the aero pack, and a few other nice features. You've got carbon fibre in here, leather everywhere. It's very nice, sort of sculpted, firm, but not uncomfortable seats, and you even have a Burmester stereo. I'm going to break with tradition too and test it out and see what it's like, or I would if I knew how to work it. This has the same sort of infotainment system as you'll find in a sort of modern Aston Martin, which is to say, totally confusing. Quick test, and the stereo is pretty good, but what's the engine like? Not so bad. Didn't have the pull I was expecting, but then I am starting off a little bit cautiously. I was in fourth, reasonably high gear. I want to be careful because, as you can probably see, it's a little bit slippy out there today. So I'm going to just up the progress gently as we go on. The gearbox, I am happy to tell you, is much improved over the SLS. It actually shifts like you'd expect a dual clutch to. You have, of course, many driving modes in this car. I'm going to pop into comfort for a little bit, so it's going to shift on its own, and it's set. You've got engine settings, you've got suspension settings, you've got gearbox settings, you've got exhaust settings, and traction control too. And they're all set, they're most comfortable, they're most relaxing. Let's just get past this cyclist. Gearbox, even in comfort, does change down fairly quickly. You only need to move the throttle pedal just a little bit. One of the most disappointing things in this actually is the fact that it's rattling a lot. This dash is really creaky, and that surprises me. For a high-end Mercedes product, I kind of thought they'd sort of put all of their build issues behind them. That's a real shock to me. Yeah, very odd. And the car is indeed full of some very nice touches, like this carbon fibre roll hoop behind me, which is probably an optional extra as well. The dash is nice enough, you can see everything clearly. You've got a little digital display in the middle, which is bright and clear and easy to read, and you've got a pair of analog gauges either side for your speed and your revs. Red line is about 7,000 RPM. This car also has one of the most dramatic views out you will ever find. I mean, Dodge Viper is sort of going to be about the closest thing you're going to find to this. It's unbelievable. Never have I seen so much bonnet in a car. I've driven other cars with similarly sized bonnets, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes you don't really even know that they're there, which is a problem. This one, you're at all times aware you are right in the boot of this car. As it happens, that boot is a pretty good size too, meaning this car's excellent for trips away. I couldn't blame anyone who's currently sat looking through the classifieds thinking of one of these in place of a 911. If you don't need the back seats, it's an interesting car to go with. They certainly didn't sell in anywhere near the same numbers as a 911, and indeed, spotting one of these is still something of an event. It was a 911 that this car's owner was considering. However, he wanted to go through all of the other options first because he suspected once he did go and buy a 911, which is his dream car, he might just stick with it for a bit. So he wanted to do some exploration, and I can entirely approve of that. Before this, he actually had a McLaren 570S, but it didn't go so well. So that car's no longer with him. I am happy to report that in comfort mode, this is not exactly luxurious, but I do believe it rides a little bit better than the SLS. And I do mean a little bit better. It's not the most costing of things. You can tell that this is still a very firmly set up car. The only one I've ever driven at all was a GTR, and that was around a track at Millbrook, which I think really teaches you nothing. And that car I do remember as being phenomenally stiff. Like, you could feel the whole thing was just absolutely rigid. And maybe with the GTR, I could sort of understand that, but I'd hope this one be a little bit more plush. That being said, it's not shaking me about or throwing me around like the SLS did. However, we do really need to get it onto a proper test road to find out just how well it fares. And that is up next. For all of the exciting driving today, I'm going to be using individual mode because that's set up more or less as everybody has it. So everything's in its most aggressive setting except the suspension, which is still in comfort. It's certainly an entertaining car to hustle, that's for sure, and it really doesn't feel like much else you're going to drive. This cockpit does feel genuinely special. It's all about that view out the front. Absolutely amazing. If you ever have laid awake at night dreaming of owning a Viper, this is definitely the best way to get something that's, well, got the steering wheel on this side and is probably a little bit more reliable. It is quick, that's for sure. Grip is better than I thought that it might. I figured with this amount of torque, power, and only 2 driven wheels, it might struggle a little bit, but actually, no, it's doing pretty well. The rain has actually just about started, and that wasn't supposed to come down today, so I'm a little bit perturbed about that, but that's okay. I'm still enjoying myself. It's not too scary. There is some torque lag. The engine is definitely the inferior to that in the SL63. That was the mighty 5.5 litre bi-turbo. It's just one of the greatest power plants of all time. Actually put out not masses more power than this. I think it's about 580 horsepower, which is similar to what you get in the sort of the top end GTs. But this responds well enough. Real baritone soundtrack too. Quite a few pops and cracks. I'm not entirely sure I'm super fond of those, but you know, hey ho, kind of fits the character of the car. There's not masses of them. Gearbox is much improved over the SLS, really actually quite enjoyable, and the suspension once you're on it actually does start to work too. Even in comfort mode though, this thing corners absolutely flat, like it's unbelievable. That does take a little bit of sense of connection away from me though. The steering's got a little bit of weight, but it's sort of worryingly light because it should have, I think, a little bit more heft to it, particularly at these speeds. And that means I feel like the edge is out there somewhere and I'm just not sure how close I am to it. On a dry day, I don't think I'd really have any concerns at all, but on one with such mixed conditions as we've got now, I do really want a little bit more feedback from it. Crikey, it is a bit loud. It's a good power plant, it's a very good engine, but it's just not got the fizz and the excitement of the old 6.2, or if I'm being honest, that just instant hit an unbelievable torque surge of the 5.5. It's sort of stuck in a bit of a no man's land really. You can do quite a lot with these though. It is a very, very flexible and durable engine. That rattle though, I cannot forgive that. That's atrocious. 23.1 miles to the gallon since reset. That's not so bad. It's in 46 miles. So that's a good average of Matthew's driving to get to me and my driving around here. So as averages go, that's all right. These shift paddles aren't the largest, but they feel nice. They've got a real heft to them as well. You feel like you're actually sort of engaging something mechanical. That I like. There isn't a particular reward, it seems, for revving this engine out, or maybe it's just the fact that with this kind of weather, I'm very happy changing up at about $5,000. This thing is filled with drama, that's for sure. If you want something to make you feel pretty special, this will do it in a way I think most 911s won't. Oh no, nope, I take it back. Does pull quite hard all the way to the red line. That's nice. Let's try let's see what this car's like for turning around manoeuvres and whatnot. See what features we've got. Gear shift lever here, I hate. It's horrible. We've got reversing camera, which is handy. This car sounds so guttural, just gargling nails all the time. Once you're up in the rev range, above about 4,000 RPM, the engine responds really quite brilliantly, and it does have pretty healthy punch, but it's low down. You expect it to kick a little bit more, and it doesn't. In first, if you want to, it will happily light up the rears, but generally, grip is much better than I thought it was going to be. The steering's not a killjoy, and it's got a little bit of weighting to it, but it just doesn't feed back to you. Brakes are decent. You can actually place the car better than you thought, but I think overall it's fair to say that the AMG GTS is better than I feared, but not as good as I'd hoped. Suspension, gearbox, definitely better than the SLS, but as a package, I think I'd have the SL63. Didn't seem really any slower to me, probably a touch more comfortable. The roof then comes down if you want it, which is a big plus for me. This one incidentally has a carbon roof on it, whereas many would have a panoramic, and you can of course also get the Roadster version of this. But in comfort even still, I'd say it could afford to be softer again on the suspension. And it's the rattle. You know what, it's crazy. That's the bit, it's just absolutely boggling my mind at the minute. This thing rattles so much. There's nothing in it, there's nothing in the boot, it's coming from the dashboard. I would guarantee you there's something in here and it's just shaking itself to pieces, and that's poor. For this kind of money, that's really, really poor. Hear that? Listen to that. Is it a car for me? No, not really. I just don't like the styling. But if you are currently sat on the fence looking at these in the classifieds and being a little bit tempted by their rather alluring price, I would say, yeah, give it some serious consideration. It's rare, it's got the pace, it's got the storage, so it's practical. You can daily drive it if you want to. and it doesn't feel that out of date. Certainly all of this stuff actually feels a lot nicer and newer than in the SL63, which was using last generation again infotainment. All Mercedes needed to do to earn a big thumbs up from me with this was make sure it only made the right noises, and that it doesn't. So the AMG GT, from me, it gets a definite try it, but do not buy it sight unseen. Make sure you're going to get a good one. And to drive, this is. It's just not built right. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, comment down below. Big thank you to Matt for bringing his car out and letting me drive it. We'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.